I'll link a copy of this book in the description so you can read it for yourself. As we can see, governance according to Sharia, that's Allah's law. Ibn Taymiyyah was a little bit of a boy genius, completed his studies when he was a teenager. At 19, he became a teacher of Islamic doctrine, well versed in Quranic studies, hadith, Islamic law, theology, Arabic grammar, and scholastic theology. He even started giving fatwa, or religious rulings or decrees on legal matters. It says here his most significant achievement in life was his jihad against the Tatars after he unmasked the corruptions in their beliefs and their deceptive claims of embracing Islam. He held that the protection of Islam should be the primary objective of all Muslims and the condition to complete their faith. I need to point out here that the protection of Islam in this case meant he went to war because some people were not good Muslims. They were not following the Sharia properly, and thus he feels that all Muslims need to do this, need to fight to protect Islam from what he considers corruption. Islam considers Christians and also the Armenians, as they state here, as kufar, and it is permissible to hold peace treaties with them. You may eat from their food that has been slaughtered by them, you may marry from their women, and also they can be released if they fell as prisoners of war. And their women are not to be killed unless they were fighting. That's so kind. He has multiple categories, though, of kafir. The second group are apostates who return to their infidel ways, so people who leave Islam. These apostates are worse than the original kufar, that's Christians, and therefore fighting them is obligatory if they do not return to Islam. For this group of apostates, their prisoners are not to be released, their food is not to be eaten, the Muslim man cannot marry their women, and they are all to be fought and killed. Remember, they are fought and killed for the crime of leaving Islam. He defines a third group who are not Islamic enough. This group, under the consensus opinion of Muslims, must be fought. Now notice, he also says this group do not carry out jihad or take tributes from the people of the book. Jihad, there's a Sharia definition of jihad. It's a legal term. The colloquial term that people mention of struggle, yes, that is correct in a colloquial sense. However, jihad is a legal term defined in the Sharia. And he says here that these people are supposed to, A, by implication, subjugate the people of the book, that is Jews and Christians, and they must take jizya, or tribute, from these people. And if they do not do so, they are bad Muslims, and under the ijma, or Islamic consensus, they must be fought. And then notice he says, none of the companions or their successors, these are the companions of Muhammad, or those who succeeded them, disagree about the necessity of fighting these people. And then he mentions a fourth group that rejected Islam while claiming to belong to it, and it is agreed upon that they should be fought totally until they return to practice the fundamentals of Islam and to prevent fitna. Fitna is seduction. I will point that out in the Sharia in a moment, so that the religion will all be for Allah alone. Notice here in the Reliance of the Traveler that fitna is under temptation. So it is the crime of seducing people away from Islam. Again, from Reliance of the Traveler, and as stated before, this is the most famous, the most well-known, the most popular Sharia manual in the world. Fitna is a test of belief when any uncertainty may mislead the subject and where steadfastness is sustained by Allah's mercy. Fitna has connotations of seduction and temptation. So fitna is not, for instance, going around killing Muslims or committing some sort of heinous crime. It is merely the crime of potentially providing something that may make a Muslim leave the faith. Now I'm going to go through the definition of jihad. I'm going to specifically use the Reliance of the Traveler. Again, I will link you to a copy of this document. Please download it and read it. It is the most established authoritative Sharia manual in the world. However, there are other copies that I could also utilize, and different books that will have similar statements. However, I will make a separate video discussing strictly the meaning of jihad in Shari terms, or within the Sharia. Right now, let me tell you what jihad is from the Reliance of the Traveler. Jihad means to war against non-Muslims and is etymologically derived from the word mujahada, signifying warfare to establish the religion. The scriptural basis for jihad prior to scholarly consensus defined in B7 is such Quranic verses as fighting is prescribed for you, Quran 2:2-6. Slay them wherever you find them, Quran 4:89. And fight the idolaters utterly, Quran 9:36. And such hadiths as the one related by Bukhari and Muslim that the Prophet said, I've been commanded to fight people until they testify that there is no God but Allah and that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. And if they say it, they have saved their blood and possessions from me. Interesting. If you then comply and you submit and become a Muslim, your blood and your possessions are safe. Of course, it also states here they have to perform the prayer and pay the zakat, which means they have to fully comply to become Muslims, and they must be fought to do so. This must be forced upon them by means of warfare. Let us continue. Within the Sharia, it states that jihad is obligatory. Obligatory is a legal term. It has a legal definition in the Sharia. But of course, obligatory means it is obligatory. It is something you must do. In section O 9.1, jihad is a communal obligation defined in section C 3.2. In other words, it is fard kifaya. When enough people perform jihad to successfully accomplish it, it is no longer obligatory upon others. The evidence for which is the Prophet's saying, he who provides the equipment for a soldier in jihad has himself performed jihad. And Allah having said, those of the believers who are unhurt but sit behind are not equal. Notice, are not equal to those who fight in Allah's path. You will also see fight in Allah's way, or jihad fi sabilillah, with their property and their lives. So those who fight in Allah's path and give their lives, Allah has preferred those who fight with their property and lives a degree above those who sit behind. I think that is pretty clear. This Sharia here, that's Quran 495. This in the Sharia, this passage in the Sharia is the interpretation, quote unquote, of the Quran. The Sharia is the Quran interpreted. If no one performs jihad and it does not happen at all, then everyone who is aware that jihad is obligatory is guilty of sin, if there was a possibility of having performed it. In the time of the Prophet, jihad was a communal obligation after his immigration to Medina. As for subsequent times, there are two possible states in respect to non-Muslims, and this is with regard to jihad. The first is when they are in their own countries, in which case jihad, defined in section O 9.8, is a communal obligation, and this is what our author is speaking of when he says jihad is a communal obligation, meaning it is obligatory upon the Muslims each year. This means jihad on non-Muslims who are in their own country. That doesn't mean defense, that means offense. That means going to attack them in their own country. Let's have a look at section O 9.3. Jihad is also personally obligatory for everyone able to perform it, male or female. Who is obliged to fight in jihad? Section O 9.4. Those called upon to perform jihad when it is a communal obligation are every able-bodied man who has reached puberty and is sane. So for offensive jihad, which is jihad in the lands of the kafir, the Dar al-Harb, in this manual it's defined as enemy lands, but it means the house of war or the abode of war. This means that men are obliged to do so. For defensive jihad, men and women are obliged to do so. Notice, however, it did say that for those who supply weapons or provide aid are also performing jihad. Let's have a look at the objectives of jihad. Section O 9.8. The Caliph makes war upon Jews, Christians, and Zoroastrians, provided he has invited them to enter Islam in faith and practice. So he has to ask them to be Muslims. And if they will not, then he invites them to enter the social order of Islam as a dhimmi, as a third-class citizen, a semi-slave, by paying the non-Muslim poll tax. That is tribute, defined in Ibn Taymiyyah's book as tribute, called the jizya. Now, the poll tax is also known as a head tax. if you look at my previous video, the head tax also means capitation tax, because if you do not pay it, there will be decapitation. And notice, if they don't pay it, the war continues until they become Muslim. So this is warfare to make people become Muslim, or else they must pay the non-Muslim poll tax in accordance with the word of Allah. And that word is, fight those who do not believe in Allah. And that is Quran 9:29. This is the interpretation of Quran 9:29. And note that it says here that Muhammad will be the final prophet. There will be none after him, and Islam is the final religion, which cancels all other religions, as I've clarified and demonstrated from the Sharia in my previous videos. But notice that I am the last, there will be no prophet after me, but this does not contradict the final coming of Jesus, since he will not rule according to the Christian law, the Evangel, but as a follower of the Prophet Muhammad. Jesus will be a Muslim. He will fight with Muhammad against the Christians, and he will destroy Christianity.